why was I so reluctant to let Paul in on my internal state? He has never struggled with depression, and I didn't give him credit for being able to understand what I was going through. And I found out he was quite capable. You would think if someone's very depressed, especially to the point of thinking about suicide, that it wouldn't be hard to figure that out. And usually that's correct. If someone's depressed, they curl up in the fetal position, they're in the bedroom a lot, they're oversleeping. There are a lot of symptoms that someone is not doing well, right? But a lot of people are like me. I have this philosophy that if I'm hurting in my head or in my body, there's no need to inflict my pain on others. And I'm not the only one out there that thinks that way. No. So I have struggled with mood disorders all my life. Mood disorder, I guess, just one of them. Mm-hmm. And that being depression. And Paul, we went for years in our marriage without Paul ever knowing that I was struggling with depression, because I gave absolutely no indication to him that I was.
Now, there might be other things, though, that might give you a clue. Like a person who is complaining of fatigue all the time, chronic fatigue. One of the big things you think about, if I hear a chronic fatigue complaint, I'm going to look for the medical stuff, I'm going to look for the lifestyle stuff, but the depression piece is always there, and I'll dig into that a little bit, and I'll ask, well, do you cry really easily? Are you crying more? For women, it's again, not to be, sexist or whatever, but I'm just telling you what I see. That I tend to see women who are depressed or anxious crying more easily, like at the drop of a hat. What I see with men is more irritability, shorter fuse. They blow up, they get more agitated over stuff that didn't bother them before. Right. And sometimes if I'm treating it medically, I'm on that part of it, one of the clues I get is, hey, I'm not crying all the time, or hey, I'm not mad at everybody all the time. That's just, so you'll see that.
Yeah.
But the things Terry's mentioning, like going to the room and curling up and not wanting to come out, or not wanting to take care of basic needs, or loss of appetite or overeating, those are big ones. Overuse of alcohol, which is self-medicating.
Stop doing all the self-care routines. You shower less. Well, of course, with COVID, everyone's showering less and less. But you're not doing the daily tasks of living, as they say.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I have decades later often tried to review and say, why was I so reluctant to let Paul in on my internal state? A lot of it was shame. I thought I had married the perfect man.
Well, she did.
And I did.
I was perfect in every way.
In every way. And there was a lot of fear of him feeling like I was defective because of his comparative innocence in life experience to mine when we got married. I did not give him credit for being able to go with me. He has never struggled with depression, and I didn't give him credit for being able to understand what I was going through. And I found out he was quite capable of doing that. So I think it is very, very important, if you're struggling with depression, if the relationship is in a good place, to talk to your spouse and share that and tell them you're struggling. Hopefully, the reaction will be, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's take care of this together.
Right. The reaction is, let's get some help.
Yeah.
Yes, let's talk. I want to support you. How can I help you? You're going for supportive care, non-judgmental. Why are you like this? What's the matter with you? That kind of stuff is never going to help. At the same time,
but it's easy to go there if you've never experienced
And it can-
Anxiety or depression.
or you could be frustrated because you feel like, hey, you're not carrying your side of the burden. You're just laying
Yeah.
around the house.
Yeah.
I got to come in from work and clean up the whole house
Yep.
because you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
And a lot of anger and frustration
Yeah.
can build. And yes, and you, the spouse, might need to go somewhere and get some help or talk to a good, mature friend and find out, just unload this and be willing to move the ball in terms of picking that other person up and saying, let's go get some help here, and not being afraid of that or resistant to that idea. Worst thing in the world is for a spouse to say, oh, you don't need to spend money on that therapy. That's a waste of time.
Yeah.
What do they know? They don't know anything. That is a bad idea because they do know things and they're good at doing what they do. So don't downplay that. Sometimes it's just this is a young mom with a bunch of kids and doesn't get any sleep.
Right.
And maybe you can help with that, or just do
Yeah.
do things to make the spouse's life better.
Because our kids were little. I will never. This is so fixed in my brain. You said every night when I come home, you're going to go upstairs and take a bubble bath.
Yeah.
And when you got two little babies all day long, that was just something that I've never forgotten. I don't know how many I took. Probably not that many, but just the offer
Yeah.
was so incredible. And this was in the midst of struggling.
So all of those things I think are important in the process. Pray for your spouse. There's a point where there can be a point. In fact, it should come earlier in the process where you, the spouse, say, "Look, get down on your knees or on your face, and you say, Lord, I cannot control all of this stuff. I'm not sure if this is biochemical, spiritual, or whatever. Get involved in this situation. Guide us. Give us wisdom." Intervene directly, whatever it is, lead us in this process. Because it is easy when you have a lot of other resources just to rely on all of those and not bring God into the picture until you're down to the bottom of the ninth and 2 outs, or you're at the end of your rope. Get him involved earlier.
If you just know your spouse is depressed, but they're just not going to talk to you about it, try going to one of your spouse's friends and enlist some help. Who will your spouse trust if they're going to discount what you have to say? Now, I'm not dumb. I realize that a lot of marriages, right, are not in that place where you're going to be, where your spouse is going to follow this beautiful script where you share and he or she responds beautifully. I realize that. And so I don't want anyone watching this to feel discouraged. If you're struggling with depression and you're in a marriage where you do not have a good communication system set up with your husband, or your wife, then 2 things. Take care of yourself immediately by sharing it with your best friend or someone, going to therapy, something. And my second thought is, as soon as you take care of yourself, you have a flaw in the marriage that needs to be dealt with.
It's a mistake to say, we're going to just treat this with medication only.
Yeah.
We're just going to treat this with some talk therapy. Mm-hmm. We're just going to treat this with some Bible verses and prayer.
Yeah.
Actually, all of them are important. Every single one of them. Getting some exercise is important. Getting with friends is important. Changing some habits is important. Getting alcohol out of the house is important if that's what's going on. But they all fit together. When there's a medical component to the depression, believe me, it happens. Treating that can be life-saving and can just help restore order. But it's a good idea for that person to be talking to somebody and looking into their life and what's going on.
Yeah.
And what's led them to this place. What are the current hot issues going on right now? And the spiritual side is very important to understand who's in charge of the universe and why it's worth living and all of that. I tell my patients when they're depressed, it's like they're riding in a car with a flat tire. They're driving down the road, they got a flat tire, they may have more than one flat tire. And the flat tire is the neurotransmitters in their brain are not working and it makes the ride really unpleasant. And the medication will help inflate the tire. and make that right a lot better. However, it's still not addressing things like how'd you get there?
You still got to cross that desert.
Why are you on this road?
Yeah.
What is your goal? Where are you going? And why are you going? And who's in the car with you?
Yeah.
And all those things are important. But if you don't treat the flat tire and you do all the other stuff, you still have a lousy ride. So it's important to do all of those things and to work on them. There's nothing unchristian or unspiritual about taking medication for a mood problem if that's what you've got, if you have that component. Any more than there's a problem if your mood problem is caused because your thyroid is overactive or underactive, to treat that. It's just 6 inches below your brain where the neurotransmitters aren't working as well. If the thyroid's not working, hey, we'll treat that. Well, you treat the other thing too. You just don't have a test to measure.
You know, when Paul finally realized I was struggling with depression, in those days Prozac was the only SSRI out there, and he wanted me to try it, and I resisted forever because I was a Christian. My happiness cannot depend on a little pill, blah blah blah. And finally, after just way too many episodes of just sinking down into that black hole, I finally relented and decided to try it. And it was like a miracle for me. It was the right thing, and it has been ever since. If I have Prozac in my system, the neurotransmitters are flowing.
The tire's not flat.
And the tire's not flat. I'm a pretty happy camper. Over the years, I've tried to get off of it from time to time. Forget to fill the prescription. Oh, maybe it's a good time to get off of it. Every single time, I sink back down. So for me, it's very, very clear cut that this is the problem.
And not everybody's that clear cut. Plus, you've done a lot of work on yourself and gotten treatment and therapy and spiritual growth and all that other stuff too.
Right.
So it's important to do it all. But it doesn't work for everybody. It's like trying on a pair of shoes. Sometimes the shoe fits, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's the whole wrong type of thing, and you don't know until you try. There's resistance among many Christians to doing medical treatment for depression. I'll hear, I'm just going to keep praying and God will take care of it. Good. Keep praying. Absolutely. Very important for your mental health. Let God in. Talk to him. All that. But if your neurotransmitters are really depleted, it's kind of like saying, I'm out of power steering fluid and I'm going to pray that God will fill it up.
Right.
When you could go to the gas station and for a couple bucks get some power steering fluid and make the car work better.
Right. Yeah.
It is important, I think, for a Christian who's dealing with depression to find a Christian therapist, because you want somebody who's going to be alongside you with your worldview.
Yeah.
A psychiatrist who does mostly medication management is needed for some kinds of problems, such as bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or something where you've got more complicated medical issues involved. For that, a good secular psychiatrist, in my opinion, can do a perfectly good job.
Because they don't counsel.
They're not doing counseling.
They're just assessing for medication.
With rare exception. The counselor needs to be the one that's aligned with your views, if at all possible. I'm not saying that you can't get good therapy from a secular person, but if at all possible, it's a better way to go.
Yeah.
Pastors, depending on how dialed up they are on this subject, some are more astute than others. I don't want to put anybody down, but some really got their hands full and really are not in a position to do this.
Well, some pastors are really they're not trained counselors, and they will try to treat it with 3 sessions and a lot of Bible verses.
But there are some that are going to have some really good ideas for spiritual formation and growth and things you can really do, practically speaking, to really move the ball in a big way.
And that might be part of the game plan, because addressing your spiritual side is part of that that whole package.
Or maybe part of the depression is thinking God doesn't care, or God doesn't like me, or something terrible is going to happen to me because God. Most depressed people, by the way, have the feeling that there is a concrete ceiling in their house and no prayers get through.
Correct.
There's something weird that happens where they just feel like God isn't there.
Right.
And this is where the pastor can really help to say, you got to listen to me. You're driving on Highway 1 in California. You're fogged in. You can't see the ocean, the blue sky, or the grass. I'm in a helicopter flying overhead. I'm telling you, Listen to me. It's there. You're going to come out of the fog. You may not be feeling it right now, but I got to reassure you that it's there. And that kind of spiritual input can be extremely, extremely helpful.